Alrighty, hey guys, welcome back to another discussion thread, review, overlook, whatever you want to call it. The title is A Better Way to Earn High-Tiered Troops. I'm going to link this down below. We're going to read what the main guy has to say, what other people have to say, and then we're going to see what the devs have to say about it. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So, main person says, playing the game right now, I don't really feel any kind of real satisfaction from earning a high-tiered army. The soldiers are better, but they really come pretty easy and far cheaper than I think they should. They don't just really feel like a good progression from villager to legionary. I'm suggesting Tail Worlds makes these soldiers harder to get into an army and far more expensive to have. Not necessarily adding new mechanics, but small changes to make soldiers feel more earned, rare, and a reward. Alrighty, so that being said, the devs have stated that they do want to increase the amount of experience that you need to upgrade. I think it's tier 5 or like tier 4, tier 5, and tier 6 troops, if I'm not mistaken. I've not heard anything about actually increasing their cost, but to make it harder to actually achieve them, they have talked about that. Alrighty, increasing the experience needed to upgrade soldiers, especially from tier 2 to 3, and then from tier 3 to 4 and tier 5 should be really drastic. Is there a tier 6 troop? Is there? I feel like there is. Am I tripping? Is there a tier 6 troop in the game? Maybe not. I'm really trying to think. I feel like there is. Alright, let's keep it going. At a minimum, the experience required should be triple, most likely 5 times than what they are now. As of right now, I can have tier 4 and 5 soldiers in my army in less than 1 hour just by killing looters. This makes zero sense and really make the soldiers feel interchangeable, as if one dies, I could just replace them really quickly. True. Now here's what I was thinking. It probably won't be added to the game. More experience makes sense, just to give it like a lot more experience that you need. What would be very, very cool is if the requirements for upgrading some troops is actually the amount of time that they're in your party. I think that would be very cool as well. What I mean by this is to go from to go from tier 4 to tier 5. I think a troop needs to be part of your army and needs to be in your fights for more than, I want to say, 1 in-game year, but that might be too much for people. But I think it would make real sense that if you want a really veteran troop, he's been there since the start, or he's been there for a whole year fighting battles, just learning the arts of combat, and therefore he becomes a tier 5. A requirement like that would be very cool to see, but I don't think it would happen. Increasing the cost of tier 3 to 5 soldiers in pay and food. It is really easy to pay for these soldiers as well, just killing other parties and selling the loot. They're professional soldier tiers and should be more expensive. This could keep the player from being able to field the entire army of tier 4 and tier 5 without major money, and could help to curb the amount of cash the player has laying around in mid-game. A professional, well-trained soldier eats more than the average peasant or militia-style soldier, and this should be reflected in any increase in food consumption, depending on tier 4 and tier 5. Eventually needing twice as much food as a tier 1 soldier, and having a larger morale penalty for having less varied food for them to eat. I kind of get that too. You know, they're a bigger troop, they expect more. So kind of makes sense. In terms of, what was I trying to say? In terms of increasing how much they cost, here's the thing. So when you talk about obviously how much it costs for the player, you have to also put into the calculation how much it's going to cost for an AI clan or an AI lord. So while it's easy for the player to achieve a lot of money really quickly just by killing looters and stuff, it's not for clans. Like they don't just, they don't, if they have very low money, they don't just focus for a whole month in game of just attacking looters, attacking looters, attacking looters. They still have like specific stuff they have to do. And if everything costs so much more, we're going to go back to the problem we had a lot earlier on in earlier patches, where they have mostly recruits and stuff like that because they don't have enough to upgrade their troops. Or if they are upgrading their troops automatically, guess what? They're going to be very, very poor. And that's going to be a problem that we're going to bring back again from earlier patches where a lot of clans are very poor, which is going to lead to a lot of kingdoms being very poor, which is going to lead to snowballing for the kingdoms that are very strong from the beginning, which are the Khazaits, the Valandians. Those guys are going to just be the top dogs again, which is something they don't want. So I do agree that maybe they should have an increase, but then we have to talk about, do we give this to the AI as well? Should it become like another AI cheat where they have a slightly less thing that they have? It just, all the stuff comes into mind. Whenever you talk about doing these type of changes to a sandbox, you have to kind of keep in mind that all the other AI that works without any of your interaction with them, they work just on their own. They still follow the game's mechanics, not to the same effect as you, the player, because obviously they have some cheats, like being able to recruit more, being able to having no horse requirement for specific troops and stuff like that. They have some perks, but they still work within the game, kind of like the player. But I do agree. I think they should cost more. I think that the experience should be a lot more, and the devs have said that they do want to increase the experience of higher tier troops because it's very easy to get them, as the main guy states right over here. These really seem like small changes, which would not be hard to change. Maybe the food consumption one, because I don't know how Bannerlord figures this. I feel these would make to expand the game, make the player another way to judge the progression. Accomplishments, having a group of high-tiered soldiers should feel like a real accomplishment with the play, which I can't read. I can't read, I'm sorry. Having a full group of high-tiered soldiers should feel like a real accomplishment, which the player needs a good foundation to maintain. Again, it sounds like easy changes, but they will impact the game a lot for the AI. And again, you can make it for only the player, but then you're going to be upset that the AI are doing so good in terms of high tier troops and you're not. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So it's a lot of stuff, right? But alright, what do people got to say? Playing about 30 hours before becoming bored. I'm hardly the most experienced player to criticize this idea, but let me add my 2 cents. Okay, a few warband mods actually do this. Okay. While I understand what they want to achieve, players should use mid-tier troops in combat. In practice, it doesn't work. What happens? Early game becomes a bit harder with low to mid tier troops only, but in the meantime, it becomes more grindy too. You have to catch double or triple amount of looters to get the same effect, but you can still do it. It just makes it okay. So he's pretty much saying it just makes it harder, right? Which kind of is what he kind of wants to happen, right? Okay. Got a lot of stuff here. Let's just see what the devs have to say. I've been doing a lot of these discussion videos, so I'm trying to just get through it in a way. But here's what the dev has to say. There are 2 OP perks at game currently which give too much passive XP, raise the meeks, and combat tips. These values are daily 15% XP to all troops and daily 30% XP to tier 1, 2, and 3 troops. If you have these, maybe it made progress too fast. These perk effects will be lowered at 1.5.7. Yeah, so this is another thing the devs have talked about, where these are kind of bugged in a way. They're only supposed to give you like 1, 2, or 3 XP, or 3 or 4 or 5 XP based on the one you choose. Like this one will be 1, 2, or 3, and this one will be 3, 4, or 5. Or what did he say? 2, 3, 4, something like that for these troops. What's it called? And they will be lowered to 1.5.7. As example, if you have plus 30 XP giving perk to your 100 tier 1 troops, they will all be tier 2 at 1.5.6 in only 8 to 9 days, even if you don't fight at all. This can be a preference for some players, but is not good for gameplay. Also, tier 1 to tier 2 needs XP amount is currently about 250. Okay, so for most units to go from tier 1 to tier 2, they need 250 experience. And tier 4 to tier 5 is about 1100. Okay. Others are numbers between 250 and 1100 in 1.5.7. Tier 1 to tier 2 will be 300. Okay, so it's a little bit more than 250, so it's 50 more. And tier 4 to tier 5 will be 1500, which is 400 more. And others change between 300 to 100 to 1500. Okay, so he's saying that all of them will be incrementally increased. So the lower tiers are going to have a small increase in the experience needed. The higher tiers are going to have a bigger percentage of XP needed than before. Cool. Let's see what else it does have to say. Do you know? This is a player asking. Do you know if there are any plans to making higher tier troops more expensive? I think having a higher tier army is too cheap. I mean both upgrade and upkeep. Okay. And then Dev responds, I do not think it changes. Tier 0 is 1, Tier 1 is 2, Tier 2 is 4, Tier 3 is 7, Tier 4 is 11, Tier 5 is 17, and Tier 6 is 24. So this is the daily cost, if you guys didn't know. And there it is. As you see, daily wages per troop are increasing too much with tier. And what I see from stream players generally having problem paying wages, especially if they have 50%, 50% plus of higher tier troops. You can say it is normal, but some players even started to not upgrade their troops even if they reach needed XP. This is something good for gameplay. Reaching an XP level should be something player is waiting for. Interesting. Okay, so yeah, that kind of also makes sense too. You know, if it's too much for some players and they choose not to upgrade them when they have the upgrade chance, it kind of shows like this player decision and kind of like, you know, actually making sure you have the money for it, which in a way is a good thing for gameplay. It's a good way to look at it. Okay, yeah. Makes sense. Then we have the same person, I think. Thanks for the reply. In my experience so far, it's quite easy to upgrade and pay for upkeep, but the biggest reason I would like for it to be more costly is this. I think it's weird that I can upgrade troops at extremely low cost, giving them armor and weapons that I can only give for myself in mid-game without using exploits. Okay. So what he's saying pretty much is they're very low upgrade costs, but they get very good weapons and armor, which is true. And the dev states, yes, this is something the game cannot explain. I'm not dealing with item prices or this stuff, but it annoys me too. Captain Lee's explanation to your problem is above. Upgrade troops will be slower with 1.5.7. There it is. And this has been talked about before, if you guys didn't know. The whole, you know, how some troops require horses to upgrade, but in terms of like high tier troops with like a very strong, let's say, shield or a very strong polearm or harpoon, they barely cost anything and they don't require that very strong shield harpoon to actually upgrade. And why this was done was very simple. The economy would be in shambles. It would have to like they would have to like up the economy by like I would have to say by so much, and they probably have to make the world even bigger and add a lot more towns and castles and stuff if they want to keep up with all like the, you know, the buying and selling of all these weapons and all these requirements. While it would make the game extremely, in my opinion, complex and extremely satisfying, I think it would take another 10 years to code, in my opinion. I think to have all those different requirements and all those different things and all those costs and all those variables and all those like just all of that combined, if you really it sounds simple, but when you really think about it, to make the game world still work how it works and the economy to still work how it works and to make AI lords work how they work with adding all those restrictions, it would be crazy. It would literally be something crazy. But it would be very cool to see, but again, realistically speaking, crazy. And that will about do it for this video. Let me know what you guys think. Ask me any questions, any concerns, and like always, stay safe.